Hi, Mob. Welcome to the first episode of season 4 of the Journey to Black Belt. Well, maybe it's not the first episode. It's I've already posted the season opener about Journey to Black Belt and what it's going to mean for this season and what the focus is. So, if you are new here, my name is Chantal Thompson. I'm a proud Barkindji Yimpa woman. I'm Ngamika, mum to 5 children. I'm Anishan to many more. I'm culturally grounded, ancestrally guided, and dreaming led in how I show up in the world. And I'm on a path to share the warrior heart with the world, to create a community where people can come together who have done the work to show up, to become themselves in the world, to heal and to face off against challenges. And the challenges have not only made them more resilient, but it's strengthened them. And I want to share with you today a concept that I have come across that is going to be a founding principle and practice for how I show up in the world. In my journey to Black Belt, it isn't just about jiu-jitsu is the vehicle. The Journey to Black Belt World Champion is the goal that is allowing me to navigate my journey and aligning my energy, my focus, and my tasks. So going, who do I need to become? What are the things I need to do to become a Black Belt World Champion? I need to be able to train. I need coaches. I need financial resources. I need the space and the time in my life to be able to commit to the training in a way that honors and weaves together with my roles and responsibilities as a mother, as an Aboriginal woman, as a business owner, whilst also leaving me space to be well and grounded in the life that I have, so that my dreams and my roles and responsibilities are founded and seated in my well-being and my overflow of abundance of joy and energy and resources as a woman and as a human being, not from my burnout or my trauma. Because here's the thing I want to share with you. As a First Nations woman, as a human being, it wasn't until the last 12 months or so that I realized that I've always started my story from my trauma. I've always made it sound like my rise, my power, and my strength is only, my success is only due to the amount of trauma and hardship and adversity that I face, that my power and my rise are only justified by the amount of pain and trauma that I've been through. And yet I know that is not true. I was able to move through the amount of trauma and pain and danger and experiences that I've had in my life because of my culture, because of my power and potential as a First Nations woman. And the calling and the dreaming and the power and the potential that I saw for my life were the things that allowed me to overcome and move through the adversity and the trauma that I faced. From the fact that when I was born a sovereign, powerful First Nations woman. I was born a human being who was worthy of everything that this life has to give me, of everything I choose to be and become, of everything that my ancestors dreamed for me. My dreaming was seeded in the womb of my ancestors, long before the colonial and patriarchal and Western narrative tried to define and shape who I could become. And here's the thing. The women in my family and the Indigenous people and ancestors who came before me weren't allowed to be themselves in the world. Even still to this day, my very power and potential, my very humanity in my identity as a woman and as a First Nations woman, as a proud Barkindji Yimpa woman, as a mother, is politicized, is debated upon. My very humanity and identity and the right to be myself, the safety to be myself in this world as Chantal Thompson, proud Barkindji Yimpa woman, mother, and a woman who is powerful beyond measure, and being the Barkindji warrior, jiu-jitsu, black belt, all the things, is still challenged, is still diminished, is still not safe, is still weaponized, is still attacked, still being told I'm too much, or not enough, or not allowed. Yet those are narratives and permissions that I no longer allow to hold me back. Will they influence me? Will it be a fight to overcome them? Will I put myself at risk because of I'm choosing and finally accepting myself fully and wholly as I am. The work to be brave, to be bold enough to be myself without apology in the world, so that those I serve and those who need me can find me. That my story, my example, my legacy, my words, my voice, my very life, and those that I love and serve can become beneficiaries of my relationship to them, their connection to me, and my legacy, both now in the lived experience, but also long after I've left this world. It's almost like I need to prostitute my trauma to justify my rise and my power and my dreaming. And yet, my power and my rise were seated in my ancestors' womb. My journey, my dreams have always been seated in the purpose, the power, and the potential. I might have been influenced or guided or impacted by the pain and the trauma, whether it was my sexual abuse at the age of 6, whether it was at 15, being told that I was more likely to end up dead or pregnant than I was to finish school by a teacher, growing up with family violence, having the experience of my mum and my stepmum having to make choices for themselves to survive their life in the world, but in doing so meant that I felt abandoned and that I wasn't good enough, that I felt rejected. That wasn't their intention, but that was the impact and the story of how it made me feel about myself, and it influenced how I showed up in the world. My dad doing the best he could, my dad rescuing me from the sexual abuse, and yet him navigating his own trauma and pain and challenges. My parents did the best they could. The adults in my life were doing the best they could with what they had. But it wasn't always what we needed, and sometimes who they were and their best were the things that hurt me the most, or that traumatized me the most and shaped and influenced. And yet, despite all these things, despite at 17 finding out that my mum was diagnosed with cancer and traveling to visit her, and my grandmother attacking me, my maternal grandmother attacking me and telling me I wasn't welcome, I wasn't allowed in my mum's room or her life or her illness and her experience, and having to take a stand at 17 with my younger brother by my side against the matriarchal grandmother of my family, the woman who caused a lot of my trauma and a lot of my fears and my doubts in myself and my right to be a proud First Nations woman. And yet still standing up and taking a stand and pushing back, grounding myself in my culture, trusting in the ancestors' guidance, and allowing my heart to lead, and the power and the potential, not my fear and my trauma. So this journey to black belt, this jiu-jitsu pathway, is about self-mastery. It's about the fact that I've already got all this experience and all this wisdom and all this evidence that when I align myself to my truth and I choose courage over fear, and I choose to surrender to the dreaming, and I let go of the how, and I just focus on the why and the what, and the journey unfolds because I show up and take the step. And yet I know this to be true, that at the age of 41, the things that I've done and who I've become are still only the tip of the iceberg of what I'm capable to do and what I'm called to do. They are the foundations for what's to come. Because I know that I was still dancing with my power and my purpose. I was still playing small. I was still filtering myself through other people's versions of what I was allowed to do and who I was allowed to become. I was still filtering it through, is it safe? Is it allowed? Will I be accepted? Will I belong? Because all I ever wanted was to belong in my community, was to be accepted and respected as a First Nations woman, in my own family as a mum and as a wife who was doing the best she could to show up and do the best she could with her dreams to fulfill my roles and responsibilities as a wife and as a mother, while still holding on to my own dreams as a woman. As an Aboriginal woman in the community, being challenged on my own Aboriginality by my own community. You're not Barkindji, you're not this, you're not that, rather than being celebrated and embraced for who I am. It was always, you're not this, you're not that, you're not allowed, you're too much. And yet, despite all of those experiences and that pain and that fear, I never fully allowed myself to become disconnected from the possibility on the other side of who I could become and the things that I could do the life that I could live if I listened to my calling, if I followed that hope and the ancestors' guidance and the flow of my river over the things that tried to block my path. And that has led to me the challenges that I face, but the things that I've done and who I've become: 3-time world champion, degrees, starting a business, becoming the Barkindji warrior, going from suicide to world champion, being the founder of the Kilana Foundation, a foundation for Aboriginal women and youth, where we are a space, a program, a community that is guided by our self-determination and sovereignty, our power and our potential, our reclamation as First Nations people. Being a powerful woman and mother, being an athlete, a mature age athlete, becoming a world champion, 3-time world champion in my 30s, becoming a black belt, a jiu-jitsu black belt after 20 years of martial arts practice, at the age of 38, after the birth of my 4th child, when I thought I would never recover from or never fully step back into the potential of who I could be as an athlete. And yet I sit here and that all still resonates. And I'm sitting here today beyond the titles, beyond the dreams, beyond the roles and responsibilities. Who is Chantel at the core? Who am I beyond all the noise, the ego, the pain, the trauma, the roles and the responsibilities and the titles? What is the truth that whispers in my heart right now? And what I want to share with you is that this season is about self-mastery. It is about being and becoming who I am at my core, in order to be able to, for all these other dreams and responsibilities and roles to come together, to become possible, will be seated in this work of being able to answer, who is Chantel beyond the titles, beyond the roles and responsibilities? As a human being, as a woman, who am I? What drives me? What calls me? And even though I don't know the answer yet, creating space to meditate on that, creating space on country to be still with that, in ceremony with that, trusting that when I'm ready, the answers will reveal themselves. And until that time comes, using the truth in my heart to align my actions and to be the next best steps to take action and create momentum. I'm not sitting back waiting for that clarity to come. I'm taking action in the most aligned, resonant way that I can, whilst creating space for the truth to emerge, the clarity to emerge. And this concept that I mentioned, antifragility, is a concept that I'd never come across before until recently. People say that they want to be, or the world, just be more resilient. But resilience is about bouncing back. It's about when you get knocked down, you're able to get back up again, but you're still in the same position. Antifragility, I forget who founded the concept or where it came from, but I'll make sure I add it into the show notes and credit them with a comment under this when I post it. This will be on my YouTube channel and on my podcast. So when antifragility is about the adversity or the thing that happens to you, not just knocking you down, but you become stronger because of it. And anti-fragile means that you're not going to break every time something bad happens or every time something hurts you or harms you. If anything, you're able to internalize that and actualize it into an experience of wisdom or lessons learned, insights gained, to then alchemize it into a soul, into a story, into a person who becomes unbreakable, who becomes so powerful within themselves that your flow is not stopped by the adversity that you face, is not shifted by the trauma that you experience. You become anchored, you become like bamboo, all these different analogies. You find your wings, you find your strength, you find your trunk of your tree. You see this big old beautiful grandfather tree. Its leaves and its branches bend with the wind. Some of it might snap off due to storms and everything else. But here's the thing about river red gum trees or gum trees, and a teaching from my culture and from country, is that in times of drought, now I'll start back from a seed A seed has to be planted for it to take root to become a tree. But in order for a seed to become a tree, it has to first stop being a seed. It has to break open. And it does this grounded and buried in the earth. Underneath, it doesn't know how far above the earth, how many layers of dirt it has to go through to hit the surface. It has to break open first, and it has to push through. And yet it does that by being a seed that has all the power and potential to become a tree. And it has to trust in its own path. It has to take what it needs from the earth and from the environment to first become a tree that can then become shelter for other animals, before it can provide shade for people to sit under, before it can become a tree that the eagle or the crow build its nests in, for that tree to be trusted to carry the next generation of our ancestors and our spirit creators. And in times of drought and hardship, the tree has to take all of its resources, all of the nutrients, and it draws it back into its root system, because the survival of the tree is more important, and its sustainability to weather the storm is more important than it looking pretty. So branches will break off, branches will die, trunks of it will drop away in times of drought and seasons of hardship, because the tree is more focused on surviving and doing what it needs to exist beyond the storm. And in some shape or form, the tree will become stronger because of the adversity it has faced. But Wapanya is a Barkindji word and principle called to keep giving back. It's a practice, it's a principle, it's a protocol. And in order to keep giving back, we need to first take what we need to be self-sustaining, so that our giving is from our overflow. It is from our abundance. It is from our well-being, not from our deficit, not from our self-abandonment, which a lot of us have been conditioned to believe that to be a good mother, to be a good leader, a good First Nations person, or the examples that were set for us of people before, is that survival is the only way to be of the greatest service to others, to abandon the self, to self-care is selfish. I would say that self-care isn't a luxury, it's a necessity. And it's a part of this principle of, to be able to keep giving back, we need to ensure that our giving is from a self-sustaining place. That when I show up to serve as a mother or as a leader or as a founder or as an athlete, as a storyteller, all the different things that I do, that those things are self-sustaining individually and in and of their own right, and their roles and responsibilities, but they also weave together in a way that each role honors and resources and strengthens the other roles. That when I'm being a mum, it is also something that will weave in and add influence and impact and resources to my role of being a business leader, of being the Barkindji warrior, of being an Aboriginal woman. And when I'm stepping into my role of being an Aboriginal woman on the front lines of my community or our experiences, that my kids see themselves as beneficiaries of that role, either in the short term or the long term. So this concept and practice of Wapanya, to keep giving back, is grounded in my capacity and my ability to create self-sustaining, nurturing environment, both within myself and in my life. When I show up to serve from others, it is not to the depletion of myself. It is not to serve from an empty self, an empty soul. And to be antifragile is to acknowledge the hurt, is to acknowledge the pain or the knockdown or the trauma or the experience that I'm having, and to become stronger because of it. Not to just to be merely resilient is the bare minimum. I'm not looking for bare minimum anymore, and that's what I've realized with January and this self-reflection and this truth-telling process with myself and getting real with myself. This is the greatest work that I can do. Even though the to-do list is a mile long, even though the anxiety and the overwhelm that is sitting on me going, you don't have the time or the luxury to sit here to get to know yourself. You need to move. And yet if I do not move from that knowing of myself, that trusting of myself, my movements, my actions will come from an energy that is of scarcity, of trauma, of pain, of survival. And that is no longer sustainable for me. That is no longer an option. When I take action, I want it to be from alignment and truth. When I take action, it will be grounded in culture, ancestrally guided and dreaming led. It will be from my truth. And it will be in trust that who I am and what I can do today is enough. It will be good enough. The good enough done version of that action will be enough to plant seeds for opportunity and to create momentum for progress. Because I'm done overwhelming myself. I'm done living from that space of fear. I'm not saying it won't influence or it won't be something I have to weather. Who I'm being is myself, and allowing that to be enough to show up and trust that if I'm doing my part, if I'm being myself from a place of truth and alignment, sovereignty and self-determination and responsibility of going, what is the best that I can bring to the table today from who I am and where I am, that is all I need to do. I have met my responsibilities. And then I surrender the outcome and how that plays out to the universe, to my ancestors, to the flow of my life. Because I want to live my life. I want to live the moments of my life. I no longer want to miss moments of my children's childhood before they become young adults. I no longer want to miss moments of my own life of being 41 and of being this version of me. And I want to trust that who I'm being and what I'm doing today is enough for me to live from today, but also it is enough to lay the foundations for the most powerful, aligned future that is possible, that is available for me to become possible, because I allowed today to become possible. So this journey, this season, is about creating space to do the work on myself, on my inner narrative, on my beliefs, because I only realized this week that I still don't believe in myself. I still don't believe that I'm worthy, that I'm allowed to be the Barkindji warrior, to have these dreams, to have this calling. I also don't trust myself. I don't trust that I'm capable. I don't trust that I'll show up this time. I keep saying I'm going to do things differently. And even though I've achieved big things, consistency and follow through have not been there. I've done the bare minimum that I needed to do to get to those levels. That includes in my training, in my business, in my finances, in my energy, in my own inner work, of being consistent and each day being committed to that bigger picture by doing the work I need to do today and aligning my efforts to the vision and the values and moving from my values and alignment. So the journey to black belt, jiu-jitsu and culture are vehicles and spaces for me. They're my arenas. They're my opportunity to become who I need to become, to learn the lessons, to be shaped and prepared so that when my life or the ancestors or a situation call for me to step up, to be the leader, to be the Barkindji warrior, to be the mother, to be the warrior heart that I'm called to be in the world, I'm prepared and as ready as I can be to do the work that moment calls of me. And then when that moment passes, I take the lessons, I take the knowledge, and I step back and I go back about being myself until the next time I'm called to step up to serve. And that's our cultural practice. Is I'm not a self-identifying leader. I become a leader because I'm called to by the moment, by my community, by my life, by my ancestors, or by the circumstances. When I get that feeling in my gut, in my body, and it resonates and I feel pulled, I feel my energy expanding, that's my sign that I need to step up and lead or contribute or fight. And that showing up needs to be grounded and seated from a spiritual and a somatic level, from my truth, from country. It needs to be culturally grounded, ancestrally guided and dreaming led, from a place of truth, from a place of my humanity. And I will no longer prostitute my trauma, and I will no longer justify my power and my rise as a First Nations woman from a colonial and Western and patriarchal narrative of who I'm allowed to be, to justify, oh yeah, she's so powerful because of the things that she's gone through. No, I was always powerful. And the most bravest and courageous thing I did was to overcome and move through the things that tried to keep me from my power. The Western and patriarchal narratives of Aboriginal despair, of Aboriginal trauma. Now, these things are very, very real. Do not underestimate me when I say that the challenges and the experiences that face First Nations people are seated our wounds are seated in colonial and patriarchal narratives and experiences. We are not responsible for those events, but we become responsible for how we allow them to shape who we are and how we show up in the world. Imposter syndrome is the greatest form of gaslighting. You only have to look at the experiences of violence against women, violence in Aboriginal communities, in families, is seated in the violence of this nation. The violence, the narrative, the weaponizing, the attacking on what it means to be an Indigenous person in Australia. You only have to look at Peter Dutton's poison, Donald Trump's poison, around that diversity is a risk to them, to their whiteness, to their maleness, that who we are is so threatening to them. You only have to look at what's happening in New Zealand to our Māori brothers and sisters, that it is so threatening to the white government of having the Māori language as a national language, of having the treaty, is so threatening to their whiteness and to their maleness that they have to attack it. How is us being in our power and our sovereignty as women or as First Nations people threatening to the dominant male patriarchal colonial narrative and experience? How do we threaten you just by being ourselves? Now that doesn't scare me, that empowers me. It calls me to my responsibility, to my rise. In order to be able to create change in my lifetime, I need to rise in my sovereignty and self-determination as a First Nations woman. I need to be culturally grounded, ancestrally guided and dreaming led in my truth, in my voice, in my experience and how I show up. And yet to do that, I need to become anti-fragile. I need to go on the journey of self-mastery. I need to become the black belt within myself so that when I am called to show up and lead, I can serve, I can fight. And yet my fight and my path is grounded in my heart and my truth. It is grounded in my responsibility to go, what I am fighting for, what I'm speaking truth to, is to ensure that I leave the world a better place for those that I serve. That I am serving to my full responsibility of the gifts and the power and the potential and the responsibilities that the ancestors called on me, that they planted in my spirit and my dreaming in this lifetime. So where in your life, what dream do you have? What calling do you have where you are called to something bigger than yourself? And in that calling, in that bigger thing, you also remember that you matter well. In order to be able to practice wapanya, to keep giving back, to become the person who can do that thing in your life, whether it's to be the best parent that you can be, whether it's to become healthy. You don't have to be chasing world titles or global impact. To take responsibility and to have the courage to go, what is the most powerful, aligned version of my life that is worth living? And to move from surviving life and to doing the bare minimum and of tapping out on yourself and your power and your potential to stepping fully into a life worth living so that those that you love and serve, that this life can become beneficiaries of your being, of your legacy, and not collateral damage. I sit here as a proud, sovereign, self-determined First Nations woman, a Barkindji Yimpa woman, a mother. I choose to bet on myself. I choose to back myself knowing that I am ancestrally guided and held and called and mandated to become this person. I sit with my dreams, I sit with my power and potential, and I plant this declaration, this warrior cry here and now, that I am going to become everything that I'm capable of becoming, of who I am becoming. And wherever that goes, whoever I'm meant to become or show up and serve, it will be because I had the courage to be and become myself, that I come from wapanya. I come from country. I come from the lessons of my culture and my ancestors. That no matter how big or how deep or how far I go, what is next, it will be because it comes from joy. It will be because it comes from a calling bigger than myself. And I will do that calling and that service in a way that honors my season and my capacity the strengths and the gifts that I have, my truth and my humanity, my experience as a human being, as a woman, in a way that honors those that I love and serve. And it is wapanya, it is self-sustaining. It is guided by women Jeka to come with purpose. Why am I here and what am I called to do? Dadiri, deep listening to self, to country, to culture, to others. These will be the principles and the practices that guide me. Mana wahine, the power of the woman, the Māori practice. And I will do so because I know that I'm worth fighting for. And that the more self-sustaining I become, the more I can give back to my community, to my culture, to this life, to my babies, to my dreaming. That my children will, maybe not now, hopefully one day in the future, they will feel that they are beneficiaries of who I've chosen to be in the world, and that not only was I Chantel Thompson, the Barkindji warrior, the warrior heart, the Anishan, the Kilana founder, but that I was also their mum. That when I take my last breath, if I'm gifted to be aware that it's my last breath on this earth, that I was also Chantel. That I had the courage to be myself, that it wasn't just about serving others. It was also about serving others from who I am. And that I am worthy of love, of joy, of belonging, of culture, of ceremony, of all the bigness and the power and the potential. That if I am called to this, then I already have all the permission I need. That I already have everything I need to take action now. And that action, if grounded in truth and grounded in the effort that is best aligned to what I'm capable of bringing to the table, will be all I need to do wapanya, dadiri, women jeka, mana wahine, to be the most powerful version of myself by being myself and only myself. Nothing less, but nothing more than what I am capable of being is me, is Chantel. So the questions that are guiding me right now is, who is Chantel beyond the titles and the roles and responsibilities? And here is to sharing my journey of self-mastery and anti-fragility as I navigate my journey to black belt. Knowing that in order to be a black belt in my life, on and off the mats, I need to be prepared to do the work of who I need to become. And the clarity will come in the stillness, in the truth that resonates in my heart, that this is the way, that this is the next best aligned step. But in order for that to become possible, I need to let go of the reality of all the overwhelm of the fear of the world right now, and create space to sit with myself and be with myself, because it's in that space that the answers will come, that I will be guided. So I hope this resonates with you in some way, and I call on you to step up and take responsibility for your own life, to be accountable to your life, to those that you love, to your own power and your potential, and not to weaponize your new knowledge or your new path against yourself, but rather to love yourself through this journey, to have compassion and grace, and take the responsibility to be accountable to who you could be if you showed up, if you did the work, if you put in the effort, and you align that work and the effort to your truth, to your capacity, and to the bigger picture and the bigger calling that's on your life. What does that look like for you? Where can you create space to ask yourself these deep questions? Who can you sit in ceremony or community with that could help you create space to unpack this and gain insight or clarity or downloads for what is possible? And who can be your guides on this journey? Who can be your mentors and your coaches? And it doesn't necessarily have to be people that you can pay. It could be looking online. What podcast can you listen to? Who is talking about things that resonate you and go, that thing right there, that could be the answer. That could be the next step. And you don't have to follow those people religiously. It could just be one thing that they say that can shift you on to the next thing for yourself. So I love you and leave you here. But where could the concept of anti-fragility, of not just being resilient, but by being strengthened by the adversity that you're facing right now and being guided and called by your power and potential over your pain and your ego? What does the warrior heart look like in your life? Where do you need your power, your truth, your heart? And where can you have the courage to step in and to create space and ceremony for the truth to come through? Big love you, mob, and here's to the journey to black belt in 2025 and to see what becomes possible through truth, through space, through resonance, and the journey to self-mastery to become the black belt that I am capable of becoming. Big love you, mob.